Stephen Bay has held his secrets and his struggles close for nearly 4 years now. Bay was Edward Snowden's boss, the man who hired the contractor who stole massive amounts of information on the closest held U.S. intelligence programs, fled the country, and began releasing those secrets to the media in 2013. Bay sat down with me for a raw interview about what those first few days were like when his employee, who suffered from epilepsy, just disappeared at the same time that secrets about highly classified programs began to leak. The years since have been filled with deep introspection. What should he have seen? What could he have done differently? He sat down with us in California to talk about his story and the lessons he learned that he is now eager to share with others.
How much time do you spend thinking about Edward Snowden?
That's a really good question. Probably more than I should. You'd think after 3 years it'd be mostly out of mind. I mean, when I'm working, when I'm engaged with my family or working, it's not there. But, I kind of look at, I'd say, anytime I read the news, anytime I love international affairs, international politics, security, all those sorts of things. Snowden's always in the forefront of my mind, and what happened, the whole event. Anytime there's a security incident, whether it's a terrorist bombing or something occurred that I read about in the intelligence community, I ask myself, I wonder if the things that Snowden has leaked had any impact on that, and kind of evaluate those things.
So take me back to that day. What was that like?
Wow. Yeah, that was June 9th, 2013. And, the whole week before, we had been searching for Ed and trying to figure out where he was. I turned on my phone and saw text messages that my phone essentially blown up. Text messages from friends, from my bosses, missed phone calls. And as soon as I read the first one, which was from a friend of mine, it said, "Looks like your worst nightmare came true." I lost it. It really, all those kind of worst fears you have working an intelligence job kind of dumped down on me. And I was in the church building, and I went and found an empty room and just melted down and cried. And it was it was tough. It was tough, every sort of negative thought you can have in the world about what possibly could go wrong, ranging from selfish thoughts like, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to go to jail, I'm going to lose my family, I'm going to be the fall guy because I was his boss and hired him, to, what happens to my employees and their jobs, what happens to Booz Allen, how does this affect the agency, just a million thoughts just start dumping down on my shoulders. Well, after I kind of gathered my composure, I had an hour before church started, so I drove home and pulled my wife into our bedroom. And my emotions had spiked then, and I just cried on her shoulder and just said, "It's him," over and over.
Ed Snowden had been working for you at this point for how long?
So he'd been my employee officially by that day, he would have been a little over 2 months. From the date that he started with Booz Allen to the date that he left the country, a month and a half, a little over a month and a half. So it wasn't very long at all.
What can you possibly get to know about a person in 2 months?
Not a ton. I didn't know him intimately as like we weren't good friends hanging out or doing a whole lot after work. I did work the closest to him physically in the office. He came to me for most of his questions, most of his issues that he'd have, and I got to any employee you'd work with closely over a period of a month and a half. Which, even though it's a short period of time, you still get to know them pretty well.
When you said he would come to you with his issues or questions, and then you saw what happened and you're reflecting back, were there things that he was coming to you for that you feel like maybe should have set off alarms or?
I've thought about that a lot. I wouldn't say there's a ton. There were a few little things, but they weren't abnormal to the extent where it should set off any alarm bells. But for instance, the office he was assigned to at the agency in Hawaii wasn't authorized to view FISA or PRISM, as he kind of revealed it, data. So he didn't actually ever have any access to that data. So he came to me once asking me, well, how do I get that? Can I get this data? How can I? What do I need to do to be able to do my job? And actually, for the job he was assigned, it was my personal belief that that office should have access to it. Now, not my decision. I wasn't going to push for it because I understand the way it works. But he asked me about it and asked for access to it. And so the first time he asked, I didn't think anything. Well, I didn't think about anything of it the second time either. But certainly the first time I wouldn't have, because I thought it was a reasonable request. The second thing that was a little strange was when he was telling me he was going out on sick leave. So he told me he had epilepsy. He tells me that, I've got medical appointments. I'm going to be out Monday and Tuesday of next week. If those go bad, I'm going to have to take time off work. And I said, okay, that's great. Hope everything goes well. Hope you don't have to. Hope you're feeling okay. But you obviously have my full support. If you need to, though, let's get in touch with HR and let's get short-term disability going. And he responded back to me that, well, I've gone through this a lot. This is nothing new to me. It's flaring up. Short-term disability is a pain. I really don't want to deal with it. I think I'm just going to go on leave without pay. I have enough saved up. That was the one thing that was really weird to me. I'm like, well, it's free money. Why wouldn't you want to go on short-term disability if you're entitled to it? Mm-hmm. And so then when the last communication I ever heard from him, which was May 21st or 22nd, after he had told me that via email that his test went bad and he was going to be out for a while, I said, okay, get in touch with HR and get short-term disability going. And he just responded with something along the lines of, okay, I'll do that. I will.
That was the last you ever heard from him?
Yeah, that was the last I ever heard from him.
When your wife said, or when you said to your wife, it was him, mm-hmm. What did you mean by that?
So he was the one leaking all the information. So earlier that week, Wednesday or Thursday, the news started to break on all these secret NSA programs. And we were all, it's obviously the talk of the agency, right? All of us analysts were blown away, or who's doing this? How could this be happening? And in fact, the day before, one of my really good friends, who I also happened to work with, he and I were chit-chatting, and I was telling him about the week, and he and I, and he had kind of known, he had met Ed, didn't know him well, but he had met him. And so he was enthralled by it. And he had made the comment of, well, wouldn't it be crazy if Ed was the guy leaking all this stuff? And I was like, no way, there's not a chance that Ed would do something like that. And then I made the comment, but if he did, it would be like my worst nightmare. I couldn't imagine anything worse.